In this video, we'll learn how to use adjustment layers in Photoshop. Adjustment layers are special layers we can use to modify other layers. They don't contain any imagery themselves, but they're great for adjusting visual properties like colors, brightness, saturation, contrast, and many others. Adjustment layers are great because they're more flexible than directly editing individual layers. They're also much easier to change or undo, and we can use them to easily affect groups of layers instead of just one. I've got the file marigolds.psd open from this week's demo files, so we can practice. We can make a new adjustment layer by clicking Layer, New Adjustment Layer in the menu bar, or clicking the adjustment layer icon at the bottom of the Layers panel. For practice, let's create a new Hue Saturation Adjustment layer. Once I've done that, I should see the adjustment layer in the Layers panel. Adjustment layers have two main sections. The adjustments themselves are represented by the icon on the left, and we can begin to edit them by clicking on it. Notice how I get 4 white corners around the icon when I click it. The white square next to the icon is the layer mask. This gives us one option for controlling which parts of our image the adjustments apply to. We'll come back to that later. Once I've selected my adjustment layer icon, I can edit the adjustment properties through the Properties panel. If you don't see your Properties panel, you can bring it up by clicking Window, Properties in the menu bar. At the top, we have 2 icons that let us switch between the properties of the adjustment layer and the layer mask that's attached to it. This is the same as clicking on the icon versus the mask in the Layers panel. The central part of the Properties panel contains layer-specific settings. These vary depending on what we chose from the New Adjustment Layer menu. We chose Hue Saturation, so let's make an edit here by bringing our saturation slider all the way to the left to desaturate our image. Down at the bottom of the Properties panel, we have some settings that are common to any adjustment layer. Working from left to right, we can clip the adjustment layer and make it only affect the layer below. Or we can click and hold to show the previous group of settings. Or completely reset all of the adjustment settings to their defaults. I won't actually click that for now. We can use the eyeball icon to toggle the layer visibility for the entire adjustment layer. That's the same as clicking the eyeball icon in the Layers panel. And lastly, we can delete the adjustment layer with the trash can icon. By default, adjustment layers will affect any layer below them. If we have a layer that we don't want to be affected by the adjustment layer, we can simply click and drag it and place it above the adjustment layer in the Layers panel. Now sometimes you're not able to reorder layers like this without throwing off other parts of your composition. In that case, we might use the Clip to Layer icon in the bottom of the Properties panel. This makes it so that the adjustment layer only affects the one layer directly below it. A more complex way of controlling which parts of your image are affected by an adjustment layer is to use the attached layer mask. You can think of the layer mask as a grayscale image that acts like a stencil, where white pixels allow the adjustments to affect the layers below, and black pixels hide the adjustments from the layers below. If we wanted, we could use a tool like the brush tool and a black foreground color to paint into the adjustment layer. Before I do that, I'll make sure to click the layer mask icon so I know that's where I'm painting. If we'd like more control, we could use a selection tool like the rectangular marquee. Once we have a selection, we could fill it with black, either with the brush tool or by clicking Edit Fill from the menu bar and setting the color to black. So you can see, as we make black pixels in our layer mask, the parts of our image below those black sections don't get the adjustments applied, so they aren't desaturated. The advantage to using layer masks to control where your adjustment layers hit is that the mask and the pixel layers are separate. That gives us more flexibility in our design. So I could move these layers with the Move tool. If you do work with layer masks, you may want to deselect Auto Select in the Move tool to avoid accidentally moving that layer mask around. Okay, that's an overview of how to use adjustment layers in Photoshop.